We are live. Today is Thursday, April 16th, and this is our weekly meeting to check in on active development tasks for Backdrop CMS. Before we get to the agenda, I'd like everybody to go around and introduce themselves. So let's start with Nate.
Hello, I'm Nate Lampton in Oakland, California, and I'm here just to do the thing. We did review, or I did review a whole bunch of issues this past week, so there's some progress to report. I'm happy to say. So yeah, we'll be giving an update on things that have moved forward. Ta-da.
Olaf.
Hi, I'm Olaf from Hamburg in Germany, and I'm today here, to discuss some current issues and progress. For example, the forward revisions, a new feature, and yeah, that's all for the moment.
Tim.
I'm Tim Erickson, St. Paul Tim, in Deerwood, Minnesota. And yeah, I'm interested in the we had 2 weeks till code freeze for 1.16, and particularly interested in this forward revisions project. We sprinted on it a little bit last weekend, so that's all.
I'm Luke McCormick in San Ramon, California. I'm a mostly former developer that does marketing and administrative things, but I plug in here to make sure that I'm not missing things that are important in this forum, but I probably won't say much today.
Yes, I don't know if you're available to introduce yourself. We'll move on to Joseph.
Hi, I'm Joseph. I'm from Las Vegas, and yeah, I'm just here to help how I can.
I am Jen Lampton. I'm also from Oakland, California, and I am very excited to be sitting in front of this beautiful new shelf. Okay, so going through the agenda, let's start with website development tasks. It looks like we have an issue for backdropcms.org. I don't know who added this to the agenda.
Yeah, I did, just to acknowledge it. I think that we've brought it up in weeks past because this has been put together 3 weeks ago. BW Panda is working on assembling using Tugboat. Tugboat QA is the service that we use for demo sandboxes on the homepage. When you click try backdrop, it spins up a demo on Tugboat, and he's suggesting that we use Tugboat QA for sandboxes as well. That right now we're using ZenCI for sandboxes. I'm honestly not sure which way to go on this one. I think that the Tugboat is probably like moderately more well supported than ZenCI is. I think that Gore, who put together ZenCI and the integration for Backdrop, has a strong commitment to the Backdrop project. But ZenCI, like as a project or as a product, more importantly, I'm not sure if it ever has gotten off the ground. So so moving to Tugboat could be a good long-term proposition for us, but generally speaking, the sandboxes on ZenCI work pretty well. So so I don't think there's a strong need to do it right now. However, it could be smart of us looking forward to consider pivoting. Tugboat also has given Backdrop essentially an unlimited account, so we can do as many demos as we want. However, I'm not not totally sure how they'd feel about this versus like right now we have like roughly about 20 sandboxes open at any given time because they tear down after a day. But the number of pull requests we have open numbers in the hundreds, and that's how many sandboxes would need to be maintained at all times. So it's a little bit of a magnitude problem. Although I know that they're trying to proposition the same thing for Drupal.org. So I don't think that this would be outside of the scope of their capability. Anyway, the only thing that I'd say that holds that up is one, we need to talk to Gore, see how he feels about this, and two, we put functionality into project module to make it possible to exclude files from the repository. And ZenCI doesn't require us to have a .ZenCI YAML file in our root, but Tugboat will. And so we need to make a new release project module to make it so that that functionality exists in the current release. And then we need to update backdropcms.org's packager to exclude Tugboat YAML files, as well as possibly other things. So that'll make it so that we can have things that are specifically developer related to our workflows. Like we may also in the near future start using GitHub Actions, for example, or another CI service. And I don't think we want those CI files, configuration files, to end up in our downloadable packages of Backdrop, just because they're only relevant to core development.
I think all that stuff is already in the Git hidden directories, so it shouldn't be relevant.
Sorry, what was that?
All of the GitHub stuff is in all of the invisible hidden directories, so it wouldn't be included.
No, I think the packager doesn't care if it's invisible or not. Like the htaccess file is invisible, but it's still included in the packages.
All of the GitHub stuff isn't, though. Like the issue templates and whatever. I don't know. Maybe GitHub has a specific like ignore GitHub stuff, but I don't think that would be a problem. But things that aren't GitHub might.
Oh, I think what the difference is there is that we only have the templates in the Backdrop issues repository, not the Backdrop code repository.
Okay.
Yeah, because and in the actual code repository, I think everything in here gets included in the package.
Okay.
Anyway, so that's just something to think about, and something that could be coming down the pipe.
Right, so next item on the agenda is in our Backdrop progress report. Nate, I'll let you update this, but I didn't see anything in the agenda about 1.15.2 bugs. I don't know if there's anything that we need to talk about.
Yeah, I don't think there is, unless anyone here has something they would like to promote as being something that's could use some immediate attention. We do still have a lot of open issues in the 1.15.2 milestone. There's 65 open issues, many of which needs review. Or sorry, that's not totally true. Many of which got reviewed recently, actually. Doc Wilmot went through the entire list and reviewed all of them. That's what I've heard, at least. And so that moved a lot of their statuses around quite a bit. So, oh, hey, Andy. I see you're here. I was just saying, that's great. Thank you for doing that. So, oh, and looks like, Jen, did you just add this one?
Yeah, this is just one we talked about last week. It's a bug with the form API that's changed between Drupal and Backdrop, and I think the change was unintentional.
Okay, so the issue is 3489, that this pound states property works in an unusual manner, or doesn't work when it's nested inside of a form element, something like that.
You can't use it on the top level form element. You have to use it on the value deep down in the form array. And it looks like that's different than it was in Drupal. And I don't think it was intended.
Okay, great. So relatively, oh, actually, it's been open since January.
Last year.
Okay. You just run into this one recently, Jen?
No, it was added to the agenda last week. And so
Ah,
I'm not sure everyone got a chance to see it. So I just copied it over.
got it.
It's also
Okay.
blocking a contrib module from being able to work. So that's why there's a question there. Okay, that's it for.
I have a question about the 1.15 issues. Can I go ahead? Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Not just the 1.5, but any issue queue for that matter. If you go through the issue queue and you find that there's an issue that's been sitting for a long time, for example, do you think it's preferable to remind the person who did the PR to check on it, or just take over and do it yourself? What's the idea? There are a lot of very simple things that I could do over, but I prefer just to give somebody a heads up. Somebody has been waiting for a month since I reminded. Usually either Gregory or Jen. It's not complaint that everybody's busy.
Yeah, I usually add a comment on the pull request if I make a replacement one. And then that way the people who worked on it initially could come back and review it if they wanted to. You're at least notifying them of it. But I don't know that there's any kind of etiquette where we need to allow the original creator of the pull request a chance to come back and work on it if they want to. I think
That's what I'm asking.
yeah,
Right?
if
we
they
keep
put the
a
code
reasonable time, or just jump in there and do it over?
I always feel that if I can get the original person to come in and do the work, then that's preferable because, you know, then they get to take it to finish. And if they're just looking for somebody to bounce things off of, then it's better for it to allow them to do the work themselves. However, if I'm in a hurry and like want to get it done like right now, then I don't think that we should say that it's bad to do that. I think that everyone appreciates any work that moves forward their issues, whether or not it's by somebody reviewing their stuff or by somebody reworking their stuff to push it forward. I think all forward movement is always good. It's just a matter of whether or not letting the other person do the work themselves like makes them feel even better. So they're both good, but letting them do it themselves might be better. So I think the little warning, like the heads up, like, hey, do you have time to work on this? Otherwise, I'm going to take a stab at it. I think that that's always a good idea to go that way first if you have time to allow that.
So do you want there to be a specific, like, should we set a policy of like, okay, we'll give people a week or something to respond, or?
No, because sometimes you need stuff right away, and I think that you should totally be allowed to just make a copy of the pull request and then push it forward right away.
Okay.
So no policy necessary. I think just courtesy. Maybe not even courtesy. I think
Yeah, I kind of feel like in general, if somebody creates a pull request, that pull request is like, this code is not mine anymore. It's now like public, and that allows anyone to come and take it and do whatever they want with it. But if you can say, oh, do you want to keep working on it, do whatever, and have a collaboration, that's better. But in general, it's out there. I don't know. It feels like I don't think there's a downside to taking things, reworking them and putting them up, especially if you can do it in a way where you can retain their commits, or at least make sure they're in the Git commit history. So when it does get fixed, they get credit for it. But I don't know. I think it's nice to offer. Sometimes I'll add a comment and be like, hey, are you still working on this? And then half an hour later, I'll be like, I fixed it. Like I didn't even really give them time to do it. It was just like, yeah.
they're both good.
I don't know.
That's clear enough. A lot of very simple things I've been waiting for a long time, so I'll try and clear some of them up before.
Okay, thank you. What eventually someday, fingers crossed, GitHub will have collaborative pull requests, and then that would be so great, because right now there's a checkbox when you submit a pull request that says allow commits from maintainers, which is nice that it asks the person who's filing the pull request, is it okay if someone else changes this? So it's almost there, but GitHub restricts that only to people that can commit to the project, which is like only 4 people. And it would be super awesome if eventually GitHub had a thing that just said, allow anybody to work on this pull request, or somehow opened that up to more than just core committers. Like there's a role for triage now, and we give everybody the triage role. Kind of, I don't know. We need to reorg our permissions at some point, but it would be nice if eventually GitHub provided a way for people to say it's okay for other people to work directly on this pull request. But yeah, we're kind of, you know, at their mercy for that functionality.
What I usually do if I want to take over another issue is I will add that person's copy of Backdrop as an upstream and pull their branch so that I can work off of it and make a new pull request that uses their pull request as a base. Although, I don't know, that seems like a lot of work.
Yeah, sometimes I do that and then I'll squash all their commits into one. So it's like, this is their work. And then I have my commit as like a second one. Depends on how much work was involved in the first one. Sometimes it's useful to have it separate.
Okay, great. Shall we move on to 116? Okay, so 116 is the next minor version of Backdrop that will be coming out May 15th with feature freeze on May 1st. Actually, before we go into the individual issues, you know, earlier this week, Jen had asked me about what should be our final feature freeze dates. Sometimes when feature freeze lands on a weekend or a holiday, we say at the end of the weekend or at the end of the holiday is when feature freeze actually occurs. This lands on a Friday, May 1st. And Jen, you said that there was a conference that was happening the 2nd and the 3rd that some people in the Backdrop community were participating in or something?
The conference is on the 1st, all day on the 1st, and it is CMS Philly. And there are 4 of us giving sessions, including Gregory, myself, Jeff, and Tim.
So we don't really have a way of saying when feature freeze officially ends, like because we normally decide them on these calls, honestly, that it's like, does that make sense? And for whatever reason, normally that falls to me. Probably as core committer, it does affect, you know, the time that I have available to do things. So that's what it is for now, I guess, is that I've been making that call in the past. My personal opinion on this is that it seems like a different set of justification for there's a conference that people are attending in versus there's a national holiday or a weekend. That it seems like if we start making extensions for individual reasons rather than national ones, that this could get a little slippery, even more slippery. And I would say that it lands on a Friday, and even though that's close to the weekend, it's not the weekend and it's not a holiday. And even though there's a large number of people of substantial influence that are participating in an event on Friday, it's still individuals. So I would say that feature freeze should stay on Friday, May 1st.
Also, it's a good reminder that features can get in before feature freeze. Like we've had a whole bunch of issues in the 116 milestone that have already been merged, which is great. And I think encouraging people to get things done before the last minute is also good. And moving the mile marker to give people more time to procrastinate might not be something that we want to do for our project.
Well, yeah, I don't disagree with anything that's been said. I'll say that I think this matters because, well, oftentimes what's happening on that last day, and this is why it's an issue, is that you're available maybe, right? So like it doesn't matter if I get something done the day before if you don't look at it and find a problem till that day. So
Correct. Yeah.
a way to soften that would be to just, if you're able to, for us to say, let's kind of treat Thursday like that day. Hopefully you're available because we have meetings. And if people kind of know that, there'll be a chance to get their stuff looked at on Thursday.
Right. Right. And really, I wish that it was continuous, like that everybody was always getting the feedback that they needed much more promptly.
Right.
And I wish that I could commit to that, but I can't. And I'm hoping that by adding on additional core committers like BW Panda, that happens more frequently.
Right.
So that's the way we're trying to soften it right now. But also, I've also just been trying to get through what we have out there right now more regularly. So I think that I'll go ahead and say, like, the days that I'll commit to doing this more frequently will definitely be the weekend before, so the 25th and the 26th of April, and we'll see about this weekend. But I think the weekend before, the 25th and the 26th, like I'll be dedicating that time to making a quick cycle of feedback for people.
Okay, I think that'll help a lot.
That sounds great.
Okay. Update. So, so 116 features that we're working on. The first one that we've got here is one that doesn't have a lot of good news, or at least not by my perspective. So base and sub install profiles issued 3174. BW Panda is the advocate for this one, and is also the one that's been doing most of the work. And there hasn't been enough time for him to post a response to this, but I posted my thoughts on this yesterday. And Joseph, your input here could also be useful to confirm what it is that I've said there, that this one's largely held up. The functionality is that it allows sub install profiles to make it so that a install profile can inherit from another one. And the holdup that we have here is that testing is difficult to accomplish because the testing framework doesn't use the normal install approach. And so testing this functionality is difficult. I've also added in there that the testing is difficult. The functionality itself is kind of uncommon. And then thirdly, there's also kind of an easy workaround to achieve the same thing without a sub install profile. And so with all of those things, I'm kind of thinking maybe this isn't a very viable thing to include. But I'd like to, let that feedback get some additional comments in there, because I'm not saying that we can't include it. I'm just saying that there's a lot of barriers here that potentially make it difficult to include, and questionable whether or not the value is there with the likelihood of it breaking in the future. But the bottom line on 3174 is that it's held up because it needs tests, and I don't see how we can test it effectively.
Right. Yeah. I had volunteered to fix that, except that I have not had much time recently to work on that.
And I think that even if you, like last we talked, Joseph, you said that we could consolidate some of the differences between the way the testing system does installation and the way the normal install process works, which would be great to consolidate those things so that there's more code reuse between the two approaches. But even then, there's still going to be two different approaches that have some code reuse, you know, so we can't really do a full install through the testing system. Just be, I mean, at least not that I can, I can't think of a way that we could do it. So I don't know, to be determined.
I don't know either.
Do you guys have any other, you guys probably, I sprung this all on everybody, I think. Do you guys have any additional thoughts on that?
My initial reaction to this is in the issue queue was at first it felt like a really fringe case. And then I realized there's I don't know, at the time I was working on some install profiles and I thought, well, this would be useful to me. And now I've kind of moved away from that approach for my work and I'm doing something different. So I don't know. I don't know if that needs to be in core or not.
All right. Well,
I was kind of hoping we could.
Go ahead.
I was kind of hoping to use this. Currently, we have an install profile, my dad and I, that we're using that is 90% a copy of the standard profile and then some modifications that run at the end of the install hooks.
Mhm.
And I was kind of hoping that we could significantly reduce that by just being able to extend the standard one. So, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I posted in that same comment, I did that same thing as well. I maintained past tense an installation profile for 777 called Surveyor, and it was the same thing where it was the standard profile except for one thing. And the workaround that I did there is I made a install hook, you know, in my .install file, and then I literally just included the standard profile and called standard install, and then I did the 2 extra steps afterwards. So it's like a sub profile in that it's calling the original one and then executing everything and then doing one additional thing, but it's yeah, but it's not really. It's not like a core supported. It's just like a simple way of, well, I'm just calling the function that has all the other stuff in it in mine, and that's all that there is to it. So there's possibly a workaround to accomplish what it is that you were doing, Joseph, and what I had done previously, and probably what BW Panda is doing as well, if it's the same thing where it's the standard profile plus one extra thing.
Well, documenting this workaround and having it available for somebody who's looking for this would be helpful. Because that's something that wouldn't occur to me, but if I found it, that would be helpful.
Okay, well, that's where that one is. We've got some time to garner additional feedback on that one. The next issue that we've got here is the new text format configuration user interface, issue 1032. Clonos is the advocate for this one, and Doc Wilmot has done the implementation on this. This one has been sitting in the needs review list for quite some time. I know Jen and I have both looked at it, but have not actually posted comments. So I think this one continues to be kind of a, we need people to look at it, both from the code standpoint and the user interface standpoint.
Yeah, as far as I agree with you, both of those would be useful to have somebody look at it. As far as the code is concerned, anything that has jQuery in it, to be honest, I am never confident that it's finished because I hate the stuff. So I've sort of paused right there, just leave it until somebody comments on the code. As far as the user interface, it would be good to have somebody look at it as well.
Awesome. Yeah, both of us in previous meetings have said, looks awesome. Like the functionality and the way that it works and the way that it consolidates that page down is I think that it's just like spot on. I think it's a substantial improvement over what we have right now. So, but code wise, yeah, I haven't even looked at it yet. So that one still, yeah, need some outside eyes. Next up, providing a way to re-enable disabled text formats, 1575. Gregory also had been the advocate for this one. I'm not sure quite how that worked. But anyway, in issue 1575, re-enabling disabled text formats, that was merged this past week. Yay, another issue kind of that we can be say, yes, we did something and get this one moved off of our weekly agenda, so you guys don't have to hear about it every week anymore. This one, kind of like other ones, had been sitting there for a long time, like waiting for final eyeballs, and that finally happened. Let's see, what was it? Yeah, Jen marked at RTBC 2 weeks ago, and I finally went through and got it merged in. So thank you, Jen. Next up, forward revisions, or allowing forward revisions, issue 4354. We had some chat about this before the recording, but there's a lot to be said here. Doc Wilmot, you've been doing most of the implementation, and Tim, you've been doing a lot of the feedback and direction on things. Tim, could we start with you and maybe give us an update on how things are proceeding on that issue?
I suppose Gregory, Doc Wilmont, and I had a meeting on Sunday, and we talked through a number of issues. The issue we were talking about before the meeting is that button on the Node Edit form, which you, Nate, had expressed some reservations about a long time ago. And we weren't sure if they were still relevant or not, but I think we'll talk more about that today. I just want to clarify for anybody else who's been coming to this issue late, that this started out to be, this issues have morphed a lot. So it started out to be adding some extra behind the scenes capability for contrib modules and advanced workflows. And it has become very focused on the specific forward revisions feature. So I think right now the discussions about naming things, there's some still debate about exactly what things should be named and how to handle that button on the Node. It sounds like that. Those seem to be, as far as I'm aware, the two things that we're sort of still grappling with. And we're all hoping that Andy is not getting too frustrated with us for all the bouncing around on this issue. I mean, I think it would be great to talk through that button issue, see if we could come to something, since that seems to be the toughest one that could potentially be the biggest problem at this stage. The naming is difficult, but it's, I mean, the naming is hard theoretically, but it's, I think, not hard technically.
Yeah, so a summary of the quote button issue that Tim's talking about is that I'd been expressing a confusion.
Nate, can we do a screen share? I have it open. I could share, or if you want to share.
Yeah, that would be great. My computer is having a little bit of an issue, so if you could start your screen share, that would be wonderful. Okay, we're back. Huh, that was weird. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, are you looking at the page?
Mm-hmm.
This is the Node Edit form on the sandbox. So I'm gonna let somebody else talk, but I'll. So
I'll continue going here. That so terminology updates here. First of all, the 3 radio buttons here, published, offline, and scheduled for later. Offline previously had been called draft, I think. I'm not sure if it was save as draft or if it was just draft.
Draft.
Just draft. So draft has been renamed offline. And then down at the bottom, there are now 2 buttons, one for save and one for save draft. And they do different things. But from a user interface perspective, it's confusing to me that I could do something like select offline and then hit save, or conversely, I could leave it as published, but then click save draft. And conceptually in my mind, those two things sound like they would do the same thing, that neither of them make it so that the content is visible to an end user. An offline saved copy or a published draft seem weird when in neither of them actually make something that's publicly visible. At least that's what I would expect. But the functionality they have when you actually use them result in different things. So yeah, the draft thing seems like it makes. Could you actually go ahead and save one? So let's say, yeah, leave it published and then hit save draft. Oh, this is okay. This is actually okay. I think that this will work, and this is probably just some strange bug functionality that there's what the URL that we're looking at here is a revision URL. But if you were to go and visit node/4 directly, which I can't think of oh, you can go to the content listing, I guess.
Do what?
Scroll up to the admin bar and go to admin/content. Yeah, or just click content. So we've got this test page. Yeah, and if you click on it, you'll see that this is probably just a bug. Oh, maybe it did get published. The first time you publish something, this page isn't actually accessible. Only the revisions are accessible, which is just weird. But I'm guessing that's not intended. So anyway, the big issue that I had with the buttons was that the button combinations can result in confusion. It also starts getting into, well, let's stop there. Let's just talk about the buttons for the time being. So before the beginning of the meeting, Jen had suggested, do you want to go ahead and say it, Jen? I saw you were unmuted there for a second.
No, go ahead.
Okay, Jen had suggested that we could prevent some of the confusion here by showing the button only when it made sense. And so when we check these radio buttons up above, we can show and hide the appropriate buttons down below. And so I'm not totally sure what that would mean. What I would expect as an end user would be like maybe offline stays as draft instead. And when draft is selected, there's a button that says save draft. And when published is selected, the button says save or it says the word publish. So the buttons update to match the actions happening. That's what I expect as an end user. As a developer, I know that these things are doing different things when you click on different buttons. And so that doesn't actually work that way. But that's what I would want as an end user, is that the button should reflect the action that is being taken. But there's a whole wrench thrown in all of that the action being taken differs based on which button you click here, and that the combination of radio buttons and buttons do different things. So that maybe that in itself is a problem.
Right. I mean, just to be clear for anybody, the reason we have two different options here, right? The published is the state of the node, right? So we're looking at the approved version of a node. And if you're editing an approved version of the node, there's two different things. The node is going to stay published no matter what in this case, but I might want to make changes to this approved version and have those be approved, or I might want to create a new draft, right? So I'm just leaving I'm just trying to define what the problem is. So, without changing these buttons at all, I have a use case for both of these buttons, right? Save the approved version or create a new draft. And we did
Didn't we have labels for these buttons that was like save and approve or save new draft? So that it was clear that they were distinct action.
Let me see if
So
I,
for the approved node, you
Yeah,
will have, if you look at the approved node in the edit form, you'd have save and approve. A revision. If it's a revision, the buttons would say save,
Yeah.
save and approve.
there we go.
Okay? So that because it's a revision, it wouldn't make sense to say save or save draft.
Originally, we had save new draft and save and approve.
Oh yeah, you could say
Yeah.
that's a good point. You could say save new draft. Yeah.
I think a new draft would be good on the node edit form so that it's clear that you're creating a new copy of what the content is. And I think also would be clear, like we've got to do something with save because save by itself, you might not differentiate from create a new copy. It might be something like save and leave approved. That's not good language, but something that indicates that like saving this saves the thing you're editing and replaces the approved copy versus make a new copy. That's a new draft.
Well,
I don't mind save and approve here also, because if it's already approved, people wouldn't mind approving it twice. I think that's better than just save.
so now we've got a save and approve button, a save new draft button.
Yeah, just like in the screenshot,
Sure.
the
Every
previous.
time I talk about this thing, I feel like apologizing to somebody.
No,
It's so confusing. I'm really not sure what to do. I think our confusion is published versus revision thing is just a new concept to me, and I'm not sure exactly how to do it. I'm not sure how we can resolve it as a group either. Somehow we have to come to a decision whether maybe we should just not do this and just I don't know.
I've been through this several times before, and what was posted in the issue was what everybody who talked about it agreed on. So that would be save and approve and save new draft. I think we don't have a screenshot for the revision form, but I like the way it is now with just save
Yeah.
draft instead of new draft. I think it looks good.
Uh,
The problem, I think, is with the radio buttons, like Nate pointed out, when those are in conflict with the buttons.
Right.
And I think that for the combinations that don't make sense, we can do stuff with the buttons. Like if you had an unpublished node, is there a version that's impossible? I don't know. If you had an unpublished node and you wanted to make an unapproved draft, that would be fine. Like they would both be draft and it would be fine. If you had an unpublished node and you wanted to make an approved draft, that would also be fine. So you need all the buttons, you need all the use cases. We just have to find a way to make that
how about,
clear to people.
I have an idea.
What's that?
I have an idea. So I have, in the meantime, I have prepared a mock-up using dev tools. And only I can't do a screen share, but I could post it in Zulip and someone of you could show it.
Nate,
And
can
the idea is to move all the revision stuff in the publishing options. You'll see that. Maybe it's not good, but I think it could be the idea. I will post it now.
So
Sure.
you should have the ability to screen share now. Nate made you a co-host.
No, I have a
well,
an
I'm not a host.
iPad.
Oh, he's
I
on
have an iPad here, so so here's a mock-up. Maybe it's not perfect, but the idea, you get the idea. We remove the revisions tab. We have the revision together with the publishing options. And so we have one vertical tab less. We don't have the extra button. And I think it's not so confusing because you leave the, for example, in this case, you leave it published, the node, but then you save a new extra revision. And then you manage it versus the revisions tab.
So, I had a version of this with that little button right down by the save button. And I think either Gregory or Jen, it sounds like it was Gregory, was like line in the sand. We should never have checkboxes for that. I don't know. I don't remember the
Why?
logic. I don't know. I
It
don't.
was because when you're performing an action, people expect to push a button. It's just the way people interact with the internet in general, with like web forms. If doing something performs an action, you expect it to be a button. And if doing something, changes a value, you expect it to be a form element like a
Mhm.
checkbox. And so checking that box changes what happens when you hit the save button. It makes it into a different action. And so Gregory felt pretty strongly that it needed to be a different button, because that was very clear to people that like if you hit the save button, you're not going to get what you expect by clicking save new revision. You're going to get something else. And so it made it more clear what was happening. But I do like the having the revision information on the publishing options field set. I think that helps a little bit, because that's where people are going to be fiddling with, like, is it a draft revision or is it an approved revision, and having the revision information there.
Yeah, also because now with the existing PR, you don't have the
problem
connection
too
to
is
the.
that, this is also going to be confusing for people, because the top three options control what happens to the node, and the bottom save new revision and revision log message controls what happens to the revision. And people might think that's the same thing. I don't know if that's a problem if they think it's the
Yeah,
same thing.
we could improve that a bit, I think. So
Yeah.
that was a quick and dirty.
Yeah,
This
I do like not having two vertical tabs though.
This does,
What do you
it's
think, Nick?
interesting. I wouldn't have thought that moving something from one location to the other would solve anything, but it might. Like what I would imagine, how I think I even said this in an earlier version of things, is that by doing different combinations of things, the results would be different. That if you said draft and save new revision, that would make a forward unpublished revision, right? And if you said publish and save new revision, then it would make a new revision and make that the active revision at the same time. However, unfortunately, schedule for later now means that what this would do is it would schedule a revision to be published in the future, which opens up a whole nother can of worms. But it would be cool.
Yeah, it's not scheduling the revision, it's scheduling the node.
Well, that's what it's doing now, but what would change with this is that checking save new revision would affect the revision, not the whole node. And same with everything else. Published would affect the publish of the revision. Draft would affect whether or not it was a forward draft.
Yeah, and that's the reason why it's a checkbox.
You can't only affect the revision. Like you can't remove the features that are in core now. Like you have to be able to unpublish a node. You can't just unpublish your revision or unimproved.
Well, right. You could unpublish a node by not saving any revision, by unchecking that box.
Yeah.
And then it would edit the current one, or edit the actual node. But if you saved a new revision, then it would save a draft of the revision, a forward revision.
I don't know. I don't
And it
like
wouldn't
that.
unpublish the node.
I think making it really hard for people to edit the current nodes. Like, I don't know. I feel like using revisions is already kind of an edge case. Like most people don't use
Right.
them. And making it really hard to do the easy thing in order to make it easy to do the hard thing makes me uneasy.
Right. Well, yeah, I can definitely agree with that. And when reviewing the this overall pull request, I get that sense all over the place about this, having buttons that say approve, when maybe you're on a single person blog, like it's weird. Like the concept of having a workflow system that is inherent in the system that you can't turn off, that it's just like you say that revisions might be uncommon, but workflow is even less common. And as it's currently implemented, it would be unable to turn it off.
Well, you're already unable to turn it off. You just can't see it. It's not like workflows a module or revisions are a module you can turn on. It's already baked into the system. It's just usually less visible.
Well, workflow isn't built in, although revisions are, and you could build a workflow around the revisions.
Right. Well, we're not adding workflow. We're just making it more visible.
I think that maybe it could be a semantic debate. I mean, the fact that we're adding buttons that say approve makes it sound like we're adding a workflow.
Well, before
Yeah, but
that was the same, it was just a checkbox before, so you didn't know. It
for
was
workflow, you need
But
permissions.
if you turn off revisions on the node type settings, then the buttons disappear. They go back to normal. So this
That's
only
true.
happens for people who want revisions.
Yeah, but Andy, for example, I often enable revisions without the option to disable them for the editors. So just in case you have a backup of the content and can go back to a certain revision. And that's all is happening without that people see it. But it's good to have this. And with the new PR, it's too visible and also confusing in my opinion. So this use case is not covered.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yep.
Makes sense.
And yeah, for example, also I had a look at WordPress and they seem to have revisions by default. Every time you save content, they make a new revision. You can also compare them and all that stuff, but it's just, yeah, it just works. And in case you need an older revision, you get it. And I think that's a quite important use case.
That's what we have now, is if you have revisions, you can't not
Yeah.
do a revision, like it does it every time.
Yeah, I think they have it, even you can't disable it.
Yeah,
So
interesting.
Mm.
Ah,
yeah, hard. But
Again, I
So-
apologize.
no, it's a
oh,
hard problem like this. It's the kind of thing where like when you think about technically what you're doing, it sounds so simple. And then when you try to build an interface for it, it's impossible. Yeah,
Reason we didn't do it 2 years ago, right?
yeah.
Okay, so a number of new issues have come up that this comment doesn't solve. But in terms of just sort of helping with Nate's original issue about the conflicting messages and stuff, you know, could this publish be like publish approved version or something so that it's really clear when you're clicking on that what it is that's being published? And I don't know. I'm just trying to add a little bit of text to solve that one problem, but that doesn't solve the other problem. So I don't know if it even matters.
Yeah, I think we also have a problem with like what published means, right? Because other CMSs use publish for revisions and ours uses publish for node status. And the fact that those two are separate for Drupal and Backdrop gives them a lot of power to have things like workflows, but it makes it really hard to build an interface that is understandable to people who maybe don't want it or don't need to know it exists, like Olaf's use case.
Right.
But yeah, I think more words are definitely going to be helpful here. I'm not sure that it's something we're going to be able to figure out right now. I agree with Nate that it's confusing if you don't know what's going on to have the things that seem like they're in conflict.
Right.
I don't know. This is hard.
We can postpone this to 1.18.
Just skip 117. Yeah.
It's confusing to me.
Can we go back to save draft and core?
You know what I think would be valuable still is that way back when it was mentioned that we could have like the API enhancement that just made it so that when you save a node, literally when you call node save, that it could save a forward revision, and that was possible through the API. If we could maybe just put that in, that would be a nice start.
That I can do.
We might have that pull request.
On the rest of it in contrib.
Right. And then everything else could be done in contrib, possibly.
Yeah.
Which honestly, I would prefer if anything that has to do with something resembling workflow was something you could turn on and off.
Yeah. And I also think workflows are interesting. So, but there is the workflow module for Drupal 7, which is okay, I think. And so we could have a look at it and if you pull it.
Yeah. Workflow for Drupal 6 and Workbench for Drupal 7 were fantastic.
Now, also in Drupal 7 is also workflow. We discussed it already.
Yeah, the workflow and the workbench modules in Drupal 7 do totally different things.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you can have, I just want to clarify, Nate, because you said you want people to be, it should be in contrib and you want people to turn it off. It could be in core and be its own module, right? That could be enabled or disabled, or do we not like to do that?
I think I created an issue a while ago that was to make it so that revisions were a module that could be turned on and off, but I don't think we ever did that. What we did instead was the control by content type.
Mhm.
I don't know if there's any discussion about the module, but that's another thought.
But
Yeah,
having it,
I'll go see if I can find.
I think it would depend on its implementation, like whether or not it was a core module or a contrib module. So I can't really say whether or not it would be appropriate.
no, I want to know if there was a reason why it was impossible. That's all, not for you to solve it right now. And it sounds like it.
Yeah, it could be a core module. You know, if there's agreement around that. Okay, well, we really talked ourselves in circles on that one again. So
Just
what
to
if-
conclude, I could do a PR that strips everything in the UI except just the API changes for now. Or should we just leave it for 1.7?
if we could literally only have the API changes, and I'm not quite sure how comprehensive those are, with no user interface changes whatsoever, then that seems like that would be, I mean, very unlikely to cause contention.
Yeah, or what about Andy? That what you said, plus a checkbox in the revision information tab, which makes clear the difference between a normal and a forward revision.
So I would, that was one of Andy's earliest things, was he literally just added a checkbox that said make a forward revision. And we talked ourselves in circles about that checkbox and then ended up where we are now. So I don't even think even a single checkbox is going to be agreed upon.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't follow that, sorry.
This has gone from very basic to very complicated to very basic again. So I think we'll stop there.
Well, I would hope, can we, you know, is most of the work done that we could get a contrib module out pretty quickly then? Like play with it and experiment a bit in contrib? I mean, I'd hate to lose the work altogether, because it seems to me like it was getting close to something, and if we could, anyways, just throwing that out there.
We could try.
Okay, well, I think that once again, we kind of have something to go off of here. Probably sounds like an API change, API only change pull request, and then possibly taking what we have in from the user interface of the current pull request to maybe making a contrib module. Okay. Lots of things there. Let's go on to something easy.
Let me just
Yeah.
ask, if we don't make the contrib module, then it really doesn't accomplish anything, right? Well, I suppose it's there for custom coders. The API is there. But in theory, we're just putting it there for some future contrib module creator anyways. And it seems to me like if we don't do it soon, it's going to get forgotten about.
Yeah, it's solving a hole in the API that was there in Drupal 7. So there were people in the Drupal 7 world that really wanted that feature that Drupal never had. And so we're building it assuming that those people will also, or other people will also want the same thing in Backdrop.
Yeah, but even in Drupal 7 and in Backdrop now, it's possible to work around it. It's just really weird that you would call node save and then you have to like manually update the database table to set the active revision to something else. And so just the weirdness right now is that you can't save a new revision without it becoming the active one, without then subsequently going and reverting the changes in the database.
So we can think of this as a developer experience improvement rather than a new feature, I guess.
Yeah, but we do need, if it's an API enhancement, we do need, because there's not going to be any user interfaces that test the functionality or that demonstrate the functionality, we need a test to make sure that the API functions in both the new way and the current way.
And a change record.
And a change record. Yep.
Of course.
Okay, so next up is allowing the customization of the author and date display, issue 2379. Tim, you're the advocate for this, but I don't think there's been any recent updates.
Well, you posted a comment earlier today that there's some, that apparently there's a few comments you have in the code and also it needs some tests. Is that right? There's some problems with the test.
One of the existing tests is failing regarding the submitted by line on comments. And Gregory had made some pointers that we need to do some XSS checking. And so both of those are valid comments, but other than that, this looks really pretty close. Like, I mean, there's only one failing test and the code generally looks really good. So needs work, but is getting closer.
Okay.
Next up, color module. Color module support is not inherited by child themes, issue 3348. In particular, this was affecting Basis, which is a color module enhanced theme that you couldn't sub-theme it and have the sub-theme maintain color support. This has been ready for ages, since January. And I finally got around and said, great, let's go. So that one got merged in just yesterday. And so, yay, that's another completed thing. Thank you, Joseph, for pushing that one along for a very long time.
At a recent meeting, didn't we talk about some possible compatibility problems with that? Were they solved or were they not real? Or am I imagining it?
I can't recall what that was about. Can you elaborate?
I don't remember. Joseph, I think you were in the call, or do you remember that? Didn't we come up with some possible compatibility issues?
I'm not sure. I know you brought up some issues with my initial changes, but I think I fixed those.
No, yeah, this wasn't me, and I might be making this up. So if nobody else remembers it, then let's assume I'm making it up. Bye.
Okay. Well, yeah, HerbDuel reviewed it and applied it to, looks like Basis, but also he has a contrib thing called Tatsu, and it worked with that as well. So it seems like, seems like we got a fair number
I was thinking
of approvals.
I was thinking something had come up fairly recently, different from those, but I'm probably confusing myself.
Okay, well, that's it. Those are the items that we've got in the 116 queue. We've been taking off ones as they are completed, so we'll knock off 2 more here: the color module child theme support and re-enable disabled text formats. And hopefully we'll get this date display one wrapped up here really soon as well. So our list is getting smaller, as it should be, and so that's very exciting. We've got exactly 2 weeks remaining before code freeze. So yeah, we're looking pretty good, other than other than revisions, which we'll get something done hopefully. So, but that's it for the update. Do you guys? We had some things about initiatives. Maybe we should just mention our timeline that we're thinking about for initiatives. Okay. So initiatives are kind of a larger, more formal way of tackling large features. We've been working around making a more solid framework around initiatives. Tim wrote up a blog post on how initiatives are tentatively going to start occurring. There's a forum section that is for initiative proposals. And we're thinking that what will end up happening is that we'll spend the next 2 weeks working on the current release, and then initiatives will start undertaking them in 116. The actual, or sorry, in 117. So we're still working on, what all of those things mean. But to seed the initiative process, we're likely going to start taking these initiatives that are proposed and then kind of formalizing them and submitting them for vote to the PMC. So it has here May 7th is the vote, but I'm not clear if that vote is like when the PMC votes, or when you're just saying when we reach community consensus to say which ones should we send. Okay, yeah, so not really a vote, but more just like solidify which ones are actually ones that should be turned into formal initiatives.
And I assume forward that then to the PMC because they have to vote.
Right. Okay, so just generally that's timeline that we're looking at. May 7th, we'll kind of be doing some powwowing on the forums to say, okay, these are the ones that we're going to formalize and then send to the PMC. So that's a community-driven effort. There's no real, there's not any further structure to it than that there's just discussion happening in the forums at this point. Okay. That's it. Do you guys have anything you guys would like to add? Okay. All right. Well, thanks guys for bearing with us for this extra long Backdrop dev meeting. Really appreciate everyone being here and present, and everybody out there on the internet that takes their time to listen or watch these videos. So thank you all. Goodbye.